Hey, what's up, fam, and welcome to this episode of 49 Faithfully. We're your hosts, Miriah Lee and TL, and tonight we're joined by special guest Jordan Elliott, Splash cousin. Jordan, thank you for joining us. How are you guys doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be on with you guys.
I'm doing amazing. Just, can't wait to get to it. Interesting to see how the rest of this free agency goes. But yeah, just happy to be on, of course.
Yeah, it's been a crazy free agency, I think, all around the NFL so far. So they just announced we signed return specialist Ray McLeod to a 2-year deal. You guys want to go ahead and talk about that? What you guys think about that signing?
Go ahead, Jordan.
I'm excited to see that they finally realize that it's kind of important to have somebody who's good at returning kicks and returning punts, because it felt like for a while they kind of just, I don't want to say they overlooked it, because I think at times Richie James was pretty good. I think Trent Taylor was good before he had his unfortunate string of injuries. But the last time I could really remember them going out and really addressing a return spot with a proven commodity, it feels like, I could be wrong, but it feels like it was like Ted Ginn, and that felt like that was almost 10 years ago. So I think that it's good that they've been proactive. And I know people want, the Jimmy stuff to come to an end and, them to make these big splashy signings. But I really like that they not only brought in Ray McLeod, but they also brought in Oren Burks, because truthfully, the 49ers special teams, I think, was the biggest hole on this roster. Like, we talk about the secondary, we talk about the offensive line and stuff like that, but the special teams was pretty bad. And I think the saving grace for them was that they kind of stepped up towards the end of the season there. And then they ended up playing Green Bay, who was the only team who was worse for most metrics in special teams. So it kind of masked that this was a bigger issue. And I understand people don't really get excited and line up to talk about special team stuff, but it is really important. And I think this is a good reflection of the 49ers being self-aware of an issue that they had last season.
Yeah. And to piggyback off of Jordan, I totally agree. And you're right. Like the last kick returner, punt returner I was excited about was Ted Ginn. However, when Kyle drafted Dante Pettis, I thought he had the ability to take over, because, I think he still has the record for the most punt returns in college from Washington with 9. So, his ability was amazing in college, and that didn't pan out. So, yeah, I agree with you. I think it solidifies the punt kickoff return situation. And then, like you said, they picked up the Oren Burks, because we were horrendous, in special teams. And me and Miriah always talk about, a good team always executes in 3 phases of the game: offense, defense, and special teams. So the fact that they went out and signed 2 key guys, and, it excites me going forward for this team.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say, that, that's something that we touch on all the time. And I agree. Our special teams last season was terrible. Pretty much from the beginning of the season to the end of the season. So, yeah, I think listening to everybody talk, I think that's something that's been discussed the last couple of days about, the group that's fighting about signing the big names against, these, I guess, less known players. And, I think you're right that they're signing players that we actually need. So that's good to see. You touched on the Jimmy still being on the team, so let's hit there real quick. Do you think that is affecting, I guess, us signing, additional players that we need? And do you think that we get rid of him anytime soon?
Well, go ahead.
You go ahead, please,
Okay.
please.
Okay, so here's my issue. So I've been on Spaces all week, and I left one about 2 hours ago. So here's my thing. 49ers have, in my opinion, a top 5 roster. So people want to come here and say, oh, let's sign all these big names, this and that. First and foremost, where's the money going to come from? We have, we touched on Spaces. I think 49ers have like some of the biggest contracts as far as per position in the NFL. Like, we have Eric Armstead, Warner, Kittle, Trent Williams, also with Jimmy being on the team. I mean, we have to sign Nick Bosa. We have the highest paid fullback, one of the highest paid kickers. So people fail to realize, like, we don't have the money to actually go out there and get those big names. However, it was all a pipe dream, in my opinion. They're saying, oh, the Chandler Joneses and all this other stuff. And in my opinion, and I know I'm kind of like on the opposite side, even before, and you know how I feel, Miriah, about how I wanted to keep Tomlinson. So after Tomlinson agreed with the Jets, to me, immediately, offensive line was the number one need. But I am happy that they went and got a corner. They went and drafted. Not draft. They went and picked up that defensive tackle from where was he from? I think the Colts or something like that, or whatever team he came from. Dante Ridgeway or whatever. I can't remember. Jordan, help me out. What team did he come from? That defensive.
The corner they signed?
Oh. No, the defensive tackle.
Yeah, Ridgeway came from the Eagles. He was on the Colts originally and then went to the Eagles, yeah.
Colts and then Eagles. So I think my issue is, and the concern, I know it's early in free agency, but my concern is Trey Lance, okay? This is my concern, because everybody on Space has been saying, well, we drafted Banks, we drafted Jalen Moore, we have to let these guys play. I totally agree. I was on the Ambry Thomas train. Let's do this and that. But my concern is having some veteran leadership on that offensive line as far as depth, because it horrifies me if we go into the season with Banks and Jalen Moore and Colton McKivitz, let's just say, if Mike McGlinchey can't go, and then Trey Lance. People don't realize those are 4 new starters on offense, 4 new ones, and I don't care what the situation is. So if you bring in some veteran presence, I think it'll help. As far as, and don't get me wrong, Trent Williams and Mack are great. I'm not saying there's no veteran leadership. What I'm saying is have some veteran depth to push these younger guys, because having 4 new starters on offense trying to learn, trying to go in there and take significant snaps, that worries me, because I feel like we're a Super Bowl team right now. So downgraded that offensive line. I played football. When you start playing musical chairs on that offensive line, it gets kind of scary. So I'm happy with the free agents. I know we're handcuffed right now. Everybody keeps saying that, we have to wait for Jimmy to get off the team. You know what? I'm going to be honest here. I don't know what they're waiting for, and I get it. Like, everybody kept saying, there's a second-round pick on the table. There was so many arguments. Why did they take it? Well, Jimmy had a no-trade clause until 1 p.m. on the 16th, so he could have turned down these second-round rumors that were going around. You know what I'm saying? So what I will say to end this, to pass over to Jordan, is, I just hope that they can get something for him. If it was up to me, he would have been gone, because, like I said, I hope they can bring in somebody like Honey Badger, but the safety class is pretty deep, and I'm sure you can touch on that as far as what you saw at the combine, but the safety class is pretty deep. But if we make any more moves going forward, I want to address that offensive line immediately. And I know people are saying, pass rush opposite of Boza. I get that. But, man, you need to protect your future quarterback. So that's what I have to say about that. So go ahead, Jordan.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that. And I think the biggest misconception is that, so first of all, I will say, I think Jimmy objectively complicates things, or not him the person, but like him being on the roster. It definitely makes things more difficult than they need to be, but I don't think it's outright preventing them from making moves. And I felt pretty strongly about that. I know Teran's been in some spaces that I've been in as well, where people are very, they've convinced themselves very passionately that Jimmy is preventing the 49ers from building this like all-star squad of Pro Bowlers. And that's just unfortunately like not true in the slightest. I think that even if they had the cap space, they wouldn't be quick to spend it on players like Chandler Jones and Von Miller. And I think that there's validity to these reports that they're meeting with these players. Josina Anderson mentioned that Chandler Jones considered the 49ers. And I think anybody who plays on the defensive line would be really smart to consider the 49ers based on the results they've gotten and the production they get. But I also think that signing a player like Hassan Ridgeway is far more in line with what this front office wants to do in the early stages of free agency. I think their big splash was kind of getting that corner in Trevarius Ward, and a signing that I really like. And I just think that if it really came down to it, they could have moved money around to bring in one of these guys. And I understand that that's not really their MO, and a lot of times it complicates things more than it needs to. But they're also, like the Trevarius Ward deal didn't get, I believe, officially signed until today. I believe now I know they had the press conference. I'm pretty sure pen got put to paper. He's on the team, but you can come to the verbal agreement. You can have that handshake deal in place. And I just ultimately feel like if a player really wanted to be in San Francisco that badly, that the Jimmy thing isn't holding it up. And again, I do think that it made things more difficult than it needed to be, because again, you get a guy like Von Miller, no offense to the 49ers. I don't think Von Miller's sitting around waiting for anybody to come around. He wants his money, and he's going to get it pretty fast. So I just think that it's a situation where hopefully it works itself out. I think, unfortunately, the entire NFL world is on pause while this whole Deshaun Watson situation sorts itself out, because there's just so many dominoes that fall. If he goes to Atlanta, then Matt Ryan probably goes to Indianapolis. If he goes to New Orleans, then Winston maybe goes somewhere else. Like it's creating so much, I don't want to say unnecessary, but like it's creating a lot of drama that I think nobody really foresaw a week or so ago. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if the 49ers are kind of in a spot where it's like, well, we waited this long, we might as well try and get something for Jimmy. Like I still think Jimmy has some tangible value, but like at a certain point, they're going to have to cut ties. So I understand them waiting a little bit now, but I really hope this doesn't turn into a situation where it's like every day this is dominating the news cycle around the team going into OTAs and, I didn't want to say it, but going into like training camp, like that would be just terrible. They need to have a clean break, and not as much just for the 49ers, like for Jimmy's sake too. Like the guy's a human being and I can kind of feel for him. The reason why I'm pretty convinced that he's not coming back was it felt like that kind of goodbye farewell thing he did was pretty from the heart and pretty straightforward. And crazier things have happened, but I just think it's a situation where it's like it may not be coming out on the surface, and it may not be, they're not coming out and doing like what Cleveland and Baker Mayfield are doing, but there has to be like a slight bit of tension and uncomfortability between these two sides. It's just, it would be natural for anybody in this situation to feel a little put off by it. So I think it's best for everybody if they just find a place for him to go and they execute it as soon as possible. And it's as much about the human element as it is about the cap space element.
Hey, Jordan, I have a question. Let me ask him this real quick, Miriah. Mm-hmm. So as far as, looking at the free agents stuff, and I get you, like, I think they're one of holding on to him because they do think Jimmy has value. And I'm the same way, like, even though people crap on Jimmy, and sometimes I'm one of them too. Like, I give fair criticism of the guy. But at the same time, it's like, him being on the roster, like you said, kind of does hinder the situation. But let me ask you this. If he's on this team, let's just say till June, because they're going to wait till maybe like the June 1st cuts or whatever the case may be, or maybe somebody wait on an injury, how comfortable would you be going into the start of the season with the offensive line we have, and then maybe they draft like 2 rookies in the draft? Like, would you be comfortable going into the season with Banks and Jalen Moore at guard?
No, because I think that you can get by with one of the 2 guard spots being a first-time, full-time starter. And I think Banks being next to Trent Williams, if they put him back on the left side, would be the best bet, just because anybody playing next to Trent Williams is going to have a slight advantage as opposed to somebody who doesn't. Trent Williams is such a good player that it'll kind of help mask a lot of deficiencies that will exist with anybody who's getting used to a full-time starting role in the NFL. I know a lot of people aren't huge on Dan Brunskill, but if they're going to go that route, I'd much rather than bring Brunskill back at the tender he was offered, which I believe is a little north of $2 million. And I think that's great value for what he is. I don't think he's a superstar player by any means, but I think he's a more than serviceable, just average level NFL guard. And he has experience. And that to me is the biggest thing right now. I felt that Moore profiled a bit more as a guard, but I've, consulted with people who know far more about offensive line play than myself. And they believe he can be a legitimate tackle. So if that's something they truly believe, maybe Moore can kind of slide into that swing tackle role where they definitely will have a need as well. And I think especially given the uncertainty around Mike McGlinchey right now, that maybe he might be better served in that role. But I just don't see too many great alternatives. Like they probably can find a veteran guy that fits their zone blocking scheme somewhere in free agency. And this offensive line class is very good, in my opinion. Like I think they looked really fast in person at the combine. And I believe, like based on the 40 times and stuff, they were the fastest collective group since I think 2003, if I recall correctly. So there's a lot of guys I like that are in this class, but I wouldn't really bank on counting on them right away. I think there's such a tough adjustment when you go from playing offensive line in college to the NFL. And the blocking scheme that the 49ers deploy with that running game it takes a bit of time to adjust to. So I would just, for the sake of the player's own development and the 49ers chances at winning games early in the season, plan some sort of way to work them in slowly and develop them this season rather than just throw them out. So no, I wouldn't feel comfortable, but I also don't think it's like terrible. Like I think they can get by, but I'm with you. Like the offense, like when you make that investment in Trey Lance, you have to do whatever you can to help him feel comfortable. And I don't think the wise thing to do is, because the flip side of it is, Cincinnati got to the Super Bowl without a great offensive line. Like the Rams offensive line wasn't great at times, but I also think those are kind of exceptions, not the rules. And like, how many times are you going to have a team going through playoff games where like Joe Burrow got sacked 9 times in the
against the Titans game?
Yeah, like that's just you can't win consistently that way. You can win in one-off, fluky games like that, but you're not going to be able to, in my opinion, be a consistent team. And I just think if you took this much time developing Trey Lance behind the scenes and you took this much time really making sure he was ready before throwing him out there, the least you could do is make sure that he's in a position where he's not going to be running for his life every game because the offensive line can't hold up.
Yeah, good stuff, man. Yeah, I totally agree, and I'm with you on that. That's just my main concern because I was so much advocating for Laken Tomlinson. Like, dude's been an Iron Man. I think he only gave up like 2 sacks in 2 seasons. He made a Pro Bowl, although I was an alternate, but still, he was that means he was in the running to make the Pro Bowl. So the fact that we lost him, just like, oh man, like we really need to address that position. And you're right, Daniel Brunskill. He has that versatility where he can play guard and tackle. So it could have been a situation where maybe they put him at guard and then put Jalen Moore at right tackle. But yeah, I think the more concern is, like you just said, is the learning curve. You know what I mean? So if you have to sit in there, and like I said, it's not just Trey Lance. Like you have Trey Lance and then you have 2 first-year starters on that line going up and against a late pass rush this year in 2022 against the AFC West. And then we play the Commanders, who have a great D-line, and you have Tampa Bay. So yeah, so it's one of those things where, you look at Deshaun Watson, like his first year in Houston, like he was great, but man, he was like one of the most sacked quarterbacks, and that's what I don't want. You know what I'm saying? So before we go to Miriah, what do you think about Will Hernandez?
Yeah, I think he's a guy who's very interesting. I think he's one of the strongest players in general in the league. He has a lot of just raw physical strength, and I think he's somebody, if you get him with Chris Forster and you get him with some of these guys that have experience in this scheme, that you can kind of, bank on the physical ability and work on developing after. I'm not quite sure what his market is or what he's going to go for, but if they can bring him in on a reasonable deal, even if it's just a 1-year deal, I think he'd be a great fit at that right guard spot. And maybe you get into a position where he can start at right guard, Banks can start at left guard, and then you have Brunskill playing that kind of super utility role, because I think Brunskill would be the idea. This is the problem that I look at, is that like Brunskill would be so good in a super utility role where just as you mentioned, he could play guard, he could play tackle, he could even play center in a pinch if you need him to, but he's also felt like their best option as a starting right guard for a while. So it's kind of hard. Like you would take a step back if you slotted him into that utility role just at the starting guard position. But if you get somebody like a Will Hernandez, maybe that naturally sorts itself out. And even for the I think it's like 2.3 million that the tender that Brunskill was offered is, I think that's great value for a guy that, if anybody along your offensive line goes down, this person can step in and play at a adequate level. Like obviously Daniel Brunskill isn't going to go out there and be Trent Williams if Trent Williams rolls his ankle, but he can at least be the guy that's not going to like be a detriment to the team and you're out there losing a game because your left tackle is a turnstile now because the starter went out. So
yeah, okay, cool, man.
To touch back on the quarterback thing real quick, I think you talked about the human element of with Jimmy Garoppolo. I think too we could talk about the human element of Trey Lance as well. Like it would be nice for him to be able to move forward as the leader, as the the for sure quarterback of the team without having Jimmy there in the way. So yeah, I think it would be nice for both of them to have that break as well. And I wanted to ask you what we don't even know for sure that Alex Mack is coming back, or if he's going to retire or what yet. So what if he does end up retiring, like then what's the move that's going to be a lot of like, either new pieces or young pieces that we're going to have across that entire line, except for Trent Williams.
It sounds, from what I'm hearing, it sounds like he will be back, but there isn't anything definitive. You're right. So it's kind of like an optimistic outlook, I think, from both the 49ers and anybody who follows the team. I don't see too many great options in free agency. There obviously isn't going to be like a big, even last year with him, getting up there in age, Alex Mack was a name most football fans knew. I'm a little biased. I'm a Cal Bears fan. So when they brought him in, I was stoked, but he's a guy who had a track record of success in the NFL. I think there are guys they could bring in via free agency that could probably do that, because I think the biggest thing with Kyle is that unless you're getting like a stalwart prospect, like, Linderbaum coming out of Iowa this year, he wants somebody that's a veteran that's comfortable operating out of that center position. And I think that, when they spent on Weston Richburg a few years ago and then the move to get Mack, like they have a clear prototype for what they're looking for. So off the top of my head, there's not really anybody I feel that would be an adequate, replacement that's going to come in and do exactly what Mack was able to do. So I think I'm just kind of the mindset that the team has to have some idea that he's committed to come back, barring some major setback. And what I would do if I was them is draft a guy somewhere in the middle rounds. I think there are some good centers in this draft. I really like Cam Jurgens out of Nebraska. I don't know where he's going to end up going, but I think he's a very good player. And I think that the best bet is to bank on getting one more year of Mack, have the person, whoever you bring in, learn from Alex Mack, who then can teach the position, some nuance, and having that kind of reference point for any rookie would be fantastic. But I hate to put it this way. If Mack does decide to opt with retirement, I think the 49ers are in kind of a tough spot because, yes, they will find somebody to fill the position, but I think Alex Mack is a really hard player to replicate. And I think that while, he wasn't the Pro Bowl level player that he was when he was still in Atlanta, that's what happens. He's 36 years old. You're going to, have some decline. He did bring stability to the center of that offensive line. And I thought that was noticeable. That was one of the first things I noticed in training camp was I was like, wow, the interior is holding up really well. And, he can still get around. One of my favorite sequences in the beginning of training camp, I think it was like the second or third day, was Alex Mack pancaked Javon Kinlaw. And Kinlaw's 6'5", like 335. He's a massive dude. And Kinlaw came back and got him a couple plays later. And you could see this kind of like, there wasn't fighting. It wasn't anything malicious, but there was this kind of like competitive fire. And I think that's so special to have because I can promise you that somebody like Alex Mack is making a player like Javon Kinlaw who's still getting used to the league and adapting. He's only going to make those players better. So as much as it helps the potential young offensive linemen on the team, I think it also does wonders for the interior defensive linemen on the team as well. So hopefully he comes back because I just don't know where they pivot to if he doesn't.
Yeah, like with, I guess, with John V's question, and the same can be, asked about center. Like how long is enough, like long enough for these guys? They always say the jump from college to NFL is hard for offensive line. So like how long is it long enough to have these guys sit behind guys? Like, if we draft a center that sits behind him this 1 year, is he going to be ready his second year to be able to take over and do what Shanahan needs him to do?
Yeah, that's a good question. So JV, I think it just depends on how well you're seeing them develop in the OTAs and stuff like that. But to me, from what I've seen since Kyle's been here, I feel like he doesn't really trust young offensive linemen. I mean, he goes out. I mean, I've mentioned this many a times. You look at our left side of the line; it's all somebody we either brought in free agency or we traded for. Traded for Trent Williams, traded for Tomlinson. We picked up Alex Mack in free agency. And then even before that, Weston Richburg. Like, he likes veteran centers, from my opinion. I feel like he likes centers who knows his playbook already and knows his scheme to just go in there and fill in right away. So if we did draft a center, I think the center would play guard for a year just to sit and learn. Like you said, Jordan, sit and learn and look at, how to play center effectively in the NFL. But, I don't know. I mean, it's a good question. And, I'm all for, being confident in the guys that you brought in to fit your scheme. Like, be confident in Aaron Banks, be confident in Jalen Moore. I'm okay with that, but I'm just worried about, like Jordan said, coming into the NFL. Like, it'd be different if they played all last year. I'd feel comfortable. But the fact that they had very few snaps, like Jalen Moore played left tackle one game when Trent Williams was out. He played pretty effective. Yeah, Colton McKivitz going into this is going to be his third season now. He's played minimal snaps on that offensive line, but week 18, he played well. So, I mean, I want to give these guys a chance. I'm just more, like I said, I'm just more concerned with them going in, being first-year starters against who we have to play. Like I said, it's still the NFL, but it just, man, Trey's going in. If he's going into like the most brutal first-year start I've ever seen. I mean, he's going to have to play. Like I said, the AFC West is just, I mean, I don't know, man. Like, I'm scared to play them dudes. Like, that pass rush that they put together in that division is just amazing. So, and like I said, I know the edges come off, or for the tackles, but still, I mean, it's just, that's what I'm worried about. So I don't know if I'm kind of half-stepping your question, JV, but at the same time, all I'm saying is, if you see in OTAs that Jalen Moore has gotten stronger and, more physical, and you see that he can handle it, then I'm all for it. It's just more of like bringing some depth, because these injuries always hurting us. Bring in some veteran depth that have been in the NFL for a couple of years that can play to push these guys. I just don't want to go in with the guys we have now, and then you draft and then you go in and like, oh, I'm not going to address the offensive line in free agency, and then you draft more. Now all you're doing is creating another problem, because now you have nothing but young offensive linemen that you don't know who you can trust. So that's my opinion.
Yeah.
Did you want to touch on that, Jordan?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I agree with that. I'm kind of the same mindset, where it's just kind of like part of the. So I fully understand why anybody would want Tomlinson back. I think that he was a great teammate, a good player, and just dependable. And as much as people want to get caught up in players making Pro Bowls and accolades and this and that, like, if you're able to just show up every week and be there, that's a huge plus in the NFL. And Laken Tomlinson was a guy that you could count on, where you knew what you were going to get every week and you knew that he was going to be there. So even if he wasn't this, all pro, left guard, like, he was somebody that is deserving of that payday based simply on the fact that he was dependable and durable. So I get it. I wrote something for Niners Nation about a month and a half ago, I think, or a month ago. Sorry, the days are all running into each other now. It was like right after the NFC Championship game, and I basically made the case of why the Niners should let Tomlinson go. And it wasn't anything about the player. It was just based on the fact that I expected him to get a rather large payday, which I believe he did. I thought it was well-deserved, and I just didn't think the 49ers kind of had it. It wasn't in the cards for them to give out a deal like that to a guy like Tomlinson based on all the other people they had to pay. And the other part of it was what you touched on was, at a certain point when you're drafting these guys, like, hey, if you draft a guy in the 5th, 6th round, whatever, like, I understand there's no rush to get them out there. You can develop them. There's not this urge. But when you're spending top 50 picks on guys, when you're spending top 15 picks on guys, because the same argument can be true for DJ Jones and Javon Kinlaw, like, at a certain point when you draft Aaron Banks in the top 50 and he has a year to learn, you have to have some kind of conviction in your picks, and you have to have some sort of belief in your own evaluation system, and at least see what you have in those players. So I don't think if you're going into practice every day and this player's just not good, because it happens, unfortunately, people miss on evaluations. Sometimes players just aren't NFL caliber players. If that happens, I'm not saying you should stubbornly just go out there and throw this player out there because you invested high capital in them. I think that's honestly worse than just acknowledging you made a mistake. But from everything I've heard and from the limited action I've seen from Aaron Banks, I have no reason to believe he can't play in this league. Like, people are comparing him to Josh Garnett and stuff, and I'm like, man, I think it's way too premature for all of that. I haven't seen anything from that. When I was at the Combine, I was talking to a former NFL All-Pro who's not affiliated with the 49ers, never played for them, never coached for them, but keeps up with the league. And we were talking, and I asked him about the running back room. And then, once we were done talking about that, I didn't ask about the offensive line at all. This was offered up on his own. He basically said that, hey, who's a guy I really like for you guys is Aaron Banks. I think he's going to end up being a really good player. And we talked a little bit more about that. And from what he had heard, they really liked the strides Banks had taken. So for whatever that's worth, I do think there is belief in Banks within that building. And if that's coming across, again, from somebody that has no reason or, there's no reason for them to be pumping up a 49ers player. Like, again, they're not like a mouthpiece for the team. They're not going to be just saying nice things to say nice things. And I'll be honest, we talked about a few players around the league, and they were very quick to say when they didn't think somebody was good. I'm not going to throw names out there because it's not important. But it made me feel good that this person whose opinion I hold in high regard at least felt some sort of belief, and it was unsolicited. It wasn't like I was like, hey, what do you think about this player? They were kind of, just be like nice and not say anything mean. It was a very unprompted and from the, heart, candid opinion of Aaron Banks. So I still think he could be a good player. I just think that there's this unfortunate, it's not unfortunate, but there's been so many good players coming to the NFL that are really good as rookies lately. It feels like every year it seems to happen more and more. So people forget that a lot of these players who end up being really good need some time to develop. You get guys like Deebo Samuel and Fred Warner where they come in right away and they're really good impact players. But at the same time, some of these other guys take some time. It took Jimmy Ward a couple seasons. It took Eric Armstead a couple seasons. At a certain point, I just think that it's only fair to evaluate these guys with final assessments and, strong statements after at least a couple seasons of seeing them play. I think the whole idea that just because they didn't get on the field means they're terrible kind of loses value when the 49ers got as far as they did. And I think that stretches to Trey Lance and Jimmy Garoppolo too. I am far from the biggest, defender of Jimmy Garoppolo and his play, but I'm also like, hey, you know what? Like, they were pretty close to getting to the Super Bowl. Like, maybe it wasn't the worst thing in the world that he played all season, but if they had gone 6-11 and missed the playoffs entirely, the conversation kind of flipped. So I just think the 49ers are at a spot where they get results and they, at least in my opinion, have earned some equity. So if we get into year 2 and year 3 and Aaron Banks is just a solid starter, no more, no less, like, to me, that's still a major victory, and it's worth letting him have the year to get used to it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense because with every Creed Humphrey, let's just say, you have the Alex Leatherwood. He struggled. You know what I mean? So yeah, so I get your point on that. And I totally agree with that. And yeah, you're right. And you kind of touched on what I touched on. It's like at some point, like you said, top 50, even top. I would even say like the first 2-3 rounds. You know what I mean? 2-3 rounds. You pick these guys. At some point, you have to have some kind of confidence of what you evaluated. You can't be like, oh, I don't know about Banks. No, you need for him to actually learn and know what you have, he has to be thrown in there. And me and Miriah talked about this too, and we were saying that, and I said this months ago, because after I was looking at everything, I'm like, man, maybe Aaron Banks was drafted because they feel like they can't keep Tomlinson. Like I was saying that for months. I was like, I mean, I hate to see it, but I kind of had that behind my mind. Like, I bet you he's there, for insurance for Tomlinson. And sure enough, I think that's exactly what would happen. So go ahead, Miriah.
Yeah, I'm going to switch it up a little bit. You talked about being at the Combine. Congratulations on that. This was your first year to cover that, right?
Yeah.
It was, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. How was that whole experience? And, tell us a little bit about how that all went.
Well, first of all, thank you. I appreciate it because this for me is this whole like experience getting to do what I've been able to do is awesome. Like, I grew up, around all sports, but football has always kind of held a very special place in my heart. So to be at kind of like the center of the NFL universe for a week and being around, I'm talking to John Harbaugh in the hallway. I'm, hanging out and getting to talk scheme with guys like Eric Bieniemy and stuff. Like, it was really cool. I am still kind of processing everything just because so much happened. And, I'm a West Coast guy. I'm from California. I still live here. So I had a hard time adjusting to the time change in the time we were there. So it was already overwhelming as is, but I'm out there, I'm working these, 18, 20-hour days. Because when we got done doing the interviews and stuff, then I'm going and writing. And then after that, we're, I don't want to act like I'm, working my fingers to the bone every minute, but we're out, networking and talking with a lot of people and coaches and front office people and all that stuff. So the biggest takeaway I think I took from it was that it was really cool to see how like welcoming people were and how like, how easygoing a lot of these people that, whether it was people that I've watched for years on NFL Network or coaches whose game plans and schemes I've really admired for a long time. Like, it was really cool how approachable everybody was. And as I'm sure you guys can tell by, me going on these long-winded rants, like, I love to talk to people. I'm a people person. I used to work in sales, so I feel like I'm pretty good at, kind of that ice breaking, like, hey, how's it going? So for me, it was really cool having that experience where I got to do that with all of these people who are, driving this sport that I've always admired so greatly. So yeah, it was really cool. And it was, awesome. I got to ask John Lynch a question, which was pretty cool. I got to, speak with a couple other GMs and coaches and stuff like that. Even Pete Carroll. I know people don't really like Pete Carroll, but he's a Bay Area guy. So I had to say, hey, Pete, I'm from the Bay Area too. How's it going, man? And it was so funny. I mentioned to a couple people there, I'm like, man, he looked really stressed. Like, he was nice to me. He didn't say anything, but I'm like, man, he's kind of stressed. And then they ended up trading Russell Wilson 10 days or whatever later. So I'm like, maybe there was more to it than I knew. So that's the that was a good time too. The training camp was fun. But yeah, the whole experience was really cool. And I'm not gonna lie, like, it was cool for me because I tried to go out of my way to make, like, whenever I do content, I try to make it like inclusive, and I try to think back on like what would like make me feel involved when I'm a fan and what things that I enjoy doing. So I really appreciate all the people that like did tune in and wanted to hear what was going on and stuff, because realistically, like, I never would have had that chance. And like, the both of you have been super supportive of my stuff as long as I've known either of you. And I would be happy to come on anyway. But on top of that, like, I'm happy to talk football anytime, because I always appreciate that genuine support, because I wouldn't be anywhere without it. So that's kind of, how I would wrap up my experience is that I would have never even gotten to experience it if it wasn't for people sharing my work, retweeting my stuff, asking me to come on shows like this where I'm able to come on and talk. So I truly, from the bottom of my heart, really appreciate that, because again, I this is the first job I've ever had in my life where I like wake up every day, not every day, but most days, and I'm like, smiling pretty big ear to ear.
Yeah, I mean, that's awesome. And I mean, anytime, like, I totally appreciate you coming on here and giving us your time. I know you're busy and there's a lot going on right now. But yeah, like I've told you before, you're one of the first people I followed once I got back onto Twitter. Like, I had signed up for Twitter years ago, but like didn't really get into it and never got onto it. So during the pandemic is when I started getting onto Twitter again, and like you're one of the first people I followed, and like, of course, been into your work and everything since then. So yeah, it's an honor to have you on. JV brought up, training camp and everything. How, I want to ask you, and that was in my notes as well, how did that whole thing, for as much as you can say, like, there was a lot of conflicting stories coming out how Trey looked in training camp. What are your feelings about like what you saw and what you thought that the 49ers let you guys see, versus what was going on, behind the scenes that nobody was able to see, I guess?
I think the biggest thing is that I don't think that there was this, like, there's this unfortunate narrative that I feel like got created where like Trey Lance was just so much better than Jimmy and the Niners just refused to play him. I don't think that's true at all. I will tell you this, the first day just watching them, I'm far from like an NFL scout or talent evaluator, but I've been watching this game for a couple decades and I have a pretty good idea of what I believe, are traits I look for. And just right off the bat, just off the basic eye test, like you could tell Trey Lance is obviously bigger, faster, stronger. The way the ball jumped, like I kept saying the word jumped because that to me is like the perfect adjective to describe it. Like the ball jumped out of his hand. Like Jimmy Garoppolo was throwing the ball jumped out of Trey Lance's hand. Like if that makes sense, like there was a clear disparity there. But what separated them was they do these, they get coined as like move the ball drills where you're doing 4-minute offense, which is like running out the clock with the lead, or the 2-minute drill when you have to move up field, with good time management. And I think that Trey Lance looked like somebody who was adjusting to the NFL game and adjusting to, the speed of the NFL game and all that extra stuff. So while I think that Trey Lance always had the edge when it came to physical ability, I do think that I saw enough from Jimmy Garoppolo in those drills and in the 11-on-11s where I'm like, okay, I can understand why they feel more comfortable starting with him right off the bat. So I like from what we all saw during training camp, because there was, I think, like 2 weeks of practice after, because once the final training camp practice ends, media still gets in for like not 11-on-11s. They get in for like stretching and like the individual positional drills. But the second they actually get into 11-on-11s where they're running plays and, really out there as close to, game action as possible, nobody gets to see that except for the team personnel. So I don't know how much changed before the end of training camp to week one, the end of training camp to week one. But I do know from what I've heard that over the course of the season, Trey Lance did get like demonstrably better over the course of the season in those 11-on-11. So I understand everybody wanted him to start week one. I saw a path where I'm like, hey, like this guy's physical ability might make up for some, growing pains. Like, yeah, there's going to be some bumps, but like, man, it's really hard to deny that arm talent and that mobility and some of the other stuff we saw. But I also think that the 49ers can truthfully, stand by what they did and feel good about it. Because again, like they got to an NFC championship game. And while I don't think Jimmy Garoppolo was the, conductor of that train necessarily, I do still think he played a pretty important part in it. And I feel like they reached a point during the season where it would have been really hard. As much as I liked what I saw from Trey Lance during this training camp, it would have been hard to just kind of like throw him out there. I think it'd be much better for his own development to give him the full offseason as the guy. We're able to build the offense. Like the game I always point to is, if you guys remember that first start in Arizona, they had like 5 or 6 holding penalties. And to me, what just from my own subjective speculation, I felt like it was because they're not used to blocking for a guy that can get out of the pocket and extend plays and get outside of them. Pretty much Jimmy's either getting rid of the ball quick or he's taking a sack. And when Trey was extending plays and getting out of the pocket, like, I just feel like instinct kind of kicked in. There was a couple plays, I think it was McGlinchey, where I saw where he was kind of like tugging on guys going to the outside because he's not used to having to move laterally with his quarterback that's extending plays. So I just think that ultimately it worked out as well as it could have given the circumstance. And, I'm not going to sit here and say that I think that you can guarantee they get to the same spot with Trey Lance, but I'm also not going to sit here and pretend like they'd be a 5-11 or 5-12 team with him. I just think that they at least were very steadfast in their, saying, hey, we want to redshirt the guy, and they ended up doing it. If they came out and the whole plan was to start in week 1 and they didn't, I'd be much more concerned. But to now, like, they kind of are at least following what they said they would do. If it carries over into another year, that's a totally different question. That's when I'm going to be like, all right, this is a major red flag. We need to have some sort of explanation for this. But as of now, I think it's, it's worked out as well as it could have, other than them winning the Super Bowl, obviously.
Before we let you go, you've already given us 40 minutes of your time. TL, you got anything that you'd like to ask him?
Yeah, I have a couple things before you go. One's football related, and the other's going to be some Bay Area rap questions. Okay, so first and foremost, if the draft was tomorrow, knowing what we already have in free agency, with the Travarius Ward, Ray McLeod, and all that, pick 61 and the 2 third-round picks, what positions would you address?
So this is tough because I would go defensive line, to be honest. I think there's a couple guys that will be there at 61 that I think could be minimum starting NFL caliber players in a defensive line rotation, but who have upside of being above average to almost Pro Bowl level talent. It'll be really interesting how things shake out. That's one thing that really did stand out at the combine. And it's so funny because I had people say like, oh, if you ask a player if they want to play for a team, of course they're going to just say they are. That's a bad question. And I understand that in like a vacuum, but I was, there with a lot of other beat writers from other teams. And they were telling me, they're like, man, whenever I hear people ask about the 49ers, especially these defensive line guys, their whole body language changes. They go from this kind of robotic, like, oh, I'm happy to be here. This is my dream. I'd love to play for whoever, to like, oh, I had fun in that meeting. Oh, I like that team a lot. So I actually had the chance to speak with a couple people from the 49ers who were doing those meetings. And I just kind of relayed like, hey, whatever you guys are doing in these meetings really works. So having said that, I think that they had a really good connection with a lot of these guys who were kind of projected to be edge players in that, middle round, somewhere between picks 40 and 80. So it wouldn't surprise me if they did go that route. And I honestly would too, just based on the fact that I think that's where they'll find the most value. I think with those other 2 picks you mentioned, that's kind of the sweet spot for me where they could find somebody that doesn't have to be a day one starter on the offensive line, but maybe they get a center. I know a lot of people like Cole Strange out of Tennessee Chattanooga. He was a really good player at the combine. He tested really well. I like Cam Jurgens a lot. Max Mitchell, the tackle out of Louisiana. Another guy I really liked was Spencer Burford out of Texas San Antonio. So if it's up to me, I would go edge first just because I think that's where you're really going to hit on value. And if you could get a player that's going to be a contributor at 61, I think that's, too good to pass up. And then you come back and you have a pick, I think at 93 and then 105. One or both of those on the offensive line, and I think you're cooking with something, because then as you get later into the draft, there are some guys you can take, receivers, running backs, skill position guys. The tight end class is pretty deep, but I think that would really help shore up some big areas of need going forward.
Okay, cool. I mean, that makes sense. So I'll tell you how I would do it. At 61, I'm going offensive line. I'm pretty sure that wasn't a secret. I'm sure you saw that coming. I'd go offensive line, and the 2. And I'll tell you why I'm going to wait to pick edge. So I'd go offensive line at 61. Then I would go probably strong safety at 93 or whatever the case may be, because I feel like we're hurting there. Even though Tarvarius Moore is coming back, that's going to be interesting. Tarvarius. It's going to be interesting. So Tarvarius Moore is coming back, but like that safety position's thin right now. And then at 105, I'm going edge. And the reason why I'm going edge is for 2 reasons. One, I trust our defensive line coach to get production out of anybody. I feel like, this edge class is pretty deep. And so if we wait to 105 to get an edge, I don't think we're really going to be hurting that much. So because I mean, besides DeMeco Ryans, I love Chris Kocurek, man. He's like probably my second favorite coach on the team. And then I truly believe Javon Kinlaw is going to be healthy. So that's going to help that middle. And then I just have confidence in Amina Hugh and Ebelcom to come into week one with more confidence and more experience in this scheme, because the second half of the season, they came on when Eric Armstead moved inside. So if you have Eric Armstead and Javon Kinlaw, healthy John McKinn inside, I truly believe you can get great production out of Minihue and Ebelcom in year 2, and then you can drive some depth in 105. So that's how I would do it. So
it makes sense to me. I don't think there's anything wrong at all with that logic. I think that's one of the fun parts about the draft, to be honest, is there's no, especially now, there's no real wrong answers, and it's really fun to hear different points of view and different, philosophies, because I feel like, it's like there's a bunch of different ways to bake a cake, but at the end of the day, if it tastes good, that's all that matters, right? So it's kind of cool to hear everybody's different points of views and where they prioritize. And I think you'd have a hard time disputing that going offensive line and building the offensive line is a bad route to go, especially with a young quarterback. So yeah, I'm totally on board with that.
Sure. And before you go, here's my wrap question for you. I don't know. So hopefully I don't out-age you, because I've been listening to Bay Area for a long time. So these 4 rappers in their prime, how would you rank them? Jay Stalin, Messy Marv, Mack Mall, and JT the Bigger Figure.
That's hard. I'd go Mack Mall first.
Okay.
To be honest, I'd go Mack Mall first. I know a lot of people aren't too big on Messi anymore, but when I was coming up, he was still kind of a big deal. So I'd probably go Messi second, Stalin 3, and JT 4.
My guy. That's exactly how I would rank him. That's awesome. Cool, man. I appreciate you being on here, brother.
Hey, literally anytime. I'm always happy to come on, and especially if we're talking Bay Area rap. That's one thing, dude. I've been traveling the last couple weeks, and I was wearing my town sweatshirt, like my Warriors sweatshirt, and I had people like, "Oh, is it Warrior stuff?" And start talking to people, and it kind of reminded me, like, I am like proud of a lot of things I've done, but there's nothing in this world I'm more proud of than being from California, the Bay Area, and it's just, as you know, it's a different vibe out here, man. And especially when we start talking about that Bay Area rap, like. Yeah. I was talking to a couple guys from Kansas City who do stuff with the Chiefs, and Mac Dre is big out there. And we started talking about Mac Dre a little bit, and I'm like, oh man, you start bumping Mac Dre anywhere in the Bay Area, I don't care who it is or where you're at, you're gonna have a lot of people that are just gonna be coming out vibing and having a good time. So yeah,
absolutely,
anytime. And if you guys ever want to have it for football stuff, like I said, I'm happy to make it work. I thoroughly enjoy talking with both you guys, and I appreciate everybody tuning in and the feedback and the comments. Like, I love doing this. So anytime that you guys want to have me on, let me know, and I'll make sure I can free up some time.
Sure.
Yes, Jordan, thank you again. I appreciate you. For those, I'm sure everybody knows you, but just in case, where they can find you, what you got going on.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me on Twitter at Splash Cousin. It's so funny. I've had a lot of people tell me that I need to change that to something more professional. But every time I do radio hits or I meet different people, they immediately equate it to the Warriors, and they're like, oh, you can't change that. So I'm really torn. So for now, it's Splash Cousin. I'm getting pressure applied to me to make it something more, like Jordan Elliott NFL or something like that. So I'm holding out for now, but so that's where you can find me on Twitter. And then I do writing at Niners Nation. So if you guys aren't familiar with Niners Nation, the staff there is fantastic. They're putting out content every day. If you're more into podcasting than written stuff, they have a great podcast network as well. They're a part of SB Nation, who they cover every single NFL team, and they have different blogs specified for each team. So, for example, Charvarius Ward came, and I had the pleasure of speaking with Mark Gunnels, who writes for Arrowhead Pride and covers them. And, we got some great insights. So that's one advantage. I do think that, there's a lot of really good 49ers content out there, but one advantage I think we do have is that it's really accessible to for times like these when you're getting players coming from other places who fans may not be familiar with. We try to do a pretty good job of getting some firsthand opinions and knowledge from people who've been covering them before too. So anything at SB Nation, I try to be as much of a company man as I can. So anything over there, I definitely recommend checking out. And they do other sports as well. If you're a basketball fan, baseball fan, they do all that stuff as well. So yeah, that's definitely where you can find my stuff.
Cool, man.
Yeah, it's funny you brought up, about the Splash Cousin, because that's actually how I found you on Twitter, was because I was looking at something for Splash Bros and your Twitter popped up, And I'm like, what the hell is this? So I'm like looking and I'm like, oh, okay, I'll follow this guy. So
That's awesome.
that's how I found you. It didn't have nothing to do with the 49ers.
That's so funny. Hey, Jordan, so just to let you know, me and Miriah will both be at the NFL draft event on that Thursday at Mandalay Bay. And I don't know about you, Miriah, but I'm going to be at the one on Friday too at that bar and grill or whatever. It's gonna, I'm talking about, right? The one on Friday. So I'll
Yeah,
be at
I'm
both
not
of
going to
those.
that one.
Yeah, you're not going to that one? So, yeah. So I'll be there at both events if you want to holler at me. So, and I think I DM'd you my phone number that a couple weeks ago. So,
Yeah, I should have it. Yeah, definitely. I'll be out there for a few days, so I definitely
okay.
would love to meet up. And I'm I'm there to work, but after hours, I'm not one to shy away from having fun at the blackjack table or
Exactly.
hanging out in the sports book. So I'm definitely down.
Nice. Okay, man.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of people here, so that should be a good time. All right, Jordan, thank you. I appreciate you. We'll talk soon.
Thank you so much, guys.
All right. TL, you want to go ahead and we'll answer some questions real quick?
Sure.
All right, let's see. What do you think? Like we kind of touched on, people of the big name against the small name, signings but like we touched on our last show that we heard, the team was going to sign a cornerback that, was in the middle, price range and everything. So that didn't come as quite a surprise to me. And I really actually like that signing a lot. But we haven't made too many moves, I guess. And that's, people are kind of worried about that right now. To me, I would say be patient. We still have time. We talked about the Watson signing and I think, or the trade, wherever he's going to go, the Watson watch. And I think that once that happens, you'll start to see, the rest of the quarterbacks fall into place. And I would expect Jimmy to get moved, shortly or after that. And then I think that we'll see some things happen. But what are your overall thoughts and feels about everything so far?
So, what I will say is, I didn't expect to sign any big names anyway, because, like I said, we have so many huge contracts on this team already, and I'm hoping that they extend Jimmy Ward just to create some more salary cap because he's in his last year of his deal and he's making $12 million this year. I would like to keep him as a lifelong 49er. I mean, he's been through so much adversity. First couple of years always hurt. People were clamoring for him to be off this team, get rid of him, and he's turned it around so much. Now he's like a fan favorite now. So I would love to keep him on this team, just create some more calorie space, but to keep him on the team longer too. So I'm with you, Miriah, that addressing the cornerback position to me was huge. Because now, even if they can bring in another vet, like for cheap, like even if they sign Jason Verrett back, I'm happy because now we have our number one corner in Ward. Mosley and Ambry Thomas will battle out for the number 2 spot. And then so like if we resign Jason Verrett, and if Jason Verrett's your third or fourth corner, that's a good cornerback room. So the Oren Burks, I get the signing because we lost Trent Sherfield because he was a special teams guy, and then now we just kind of replaced Trent Sherfield with him. You know what I mean, as far as like a gunner and stuff. So I'm okay with it. I'd give it a C only because we haven't addressed offensive line. Like I don't see any urgency to take care of that position, and that's irritating me, to be honest. Right. Because like I said, Trey needs to be put in the best position possible. That's the most important position on the football team. And I get it. Like I mean, like I said, I'm not sitting here complaining. We got us a punt returner. We've been crying about a punt returner. We got one. We've been crying about a good secondary. We're getting one. But I think we should skip. If we can sign 2 more free agents, we need to get some offensive line depth. Like if we go and get a Will Hernandez and then wait until the draft or like maybe the June 1st cuts, I'm happy about that. You know what I'm saying? But safety, strong safety and offensive line, we need to address that like as soon as possible. Those should be our next 2 moves, in my opinion. But I think what the thing that bothers me is with the Jimmy thing is like, I just don't know if they're being stubborn because they just want to be right. Like, I just hope that they're just not like, well, I asked for a second, to begin with, and that's what I'm going to get. Like, get realistic with yourself and temper expectations and just be like, you know what? Like if somebody calls you tomorrow and says, look, let me give you a third this year, or if this somebody says, I'll give you a fourth this year and a fifth next year that can turn into a second, you got to jump on it. Because then you can use that money and allocate that to protect your future quarterback and maybe bring in like a honey badger if you choose to. You know what I mean? So that's my opinion. So I give it a C.
And then, yeah, so the Rams earlier today signed Robinson. And, he's asking if we should go after OBJ. I do think that OBJ gets re-signed with the Rams as well. I wouldn't personally go after him, and he's injured, so I'm sick of going after players that are injured. But I just think, I don't know, he's just not somebody I would personally go after.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Well, the fact, and I'm not saying Ray McLeod is OBJ. I think Ray McLeod, he's fast. He could be a good deep threat, like in the mold, like a Taylor Gabriel. If I'm going after a receiver, I'm going after like a Valdez-Scantling. He's probably going to go back to Green Bay now that they lost Devontae Adams because he has, chemistry with Aaron Rodgers. But I want a fast guy who can take the top off of defense. Yeah, even though I know Ayuk said deep ball me, please, and I get that. But I don't think that's going to be his game where he's going deep all the time. Like if you can bring in somebody like a John Ross for cheap, or like I said, a Valdez-Scantling, to me it'd be better because he's big and fast, and he's known and he can block. He's like 6'4", 220. He blocks and he runs a 4.37. So if you can bring in somebody like that, OBJ, you guys forget he tore his ACL in February, so he's not playing significant stats. So maybe the playoffs. So I would stay clear of OBJ.
About like the whole, just like the moves in the NFL. What do you think so far about the free agency overall? Like, what do you think about that? Adams getting traded to the Raiders, pretty crazy.
That is crazy to me. Well, I'll say this, and Debo said it perfectly. NFC is getting weaker.
Yep.
I'll take that all day.
Yep.
And so that's why I'm like, man, we need to get while the getting is good. Like we have possibly a Super Bowl roster with the pieces we have. So that's why if it was me, like I said, and whatever I say, it doesn't matter. But if it was up to me, Jimmy would have been gone like weeks ago. Like I'm getting rid of this dude, but it is what it is. But that's why I'm worried that we're going to hold on for him for too long, and then there's not going to be enough depth to fill the holes, because we can sit there and have a great defense all we want, but if Trey's always on his back, like, you know what I mean? Because our offensive line is shoddy. Like, what difference does it make? So, yeah, I'm glad the NFC is getting weaker. The AFC West is just ridiculous right now. I mean, just them, and they're being aggressive. Like I think they're feeding off each other. Like, okay, you make this move, I'm making this move. Oh, you want to get Khalil Mack? Okay, I'll get me a Russell Wilson. Oh, you want your Russell Wilson? Then I'll get me a Devontae Adams. So it's just like they're just like playing chess with each other. Like, okay, you make a move, I make a move type thing. So that division is loaded. I think they have overtaken us as the best division in football.
I agree. I posted that earlier before we came on.
Oh, you did? Yeah, I think they've overtaken us. It used to be us, but with Russell Wilson gone, and then like Arizona is kind of like what it is, like, and then so basically it's just us and the Rams right now, in my opinion. So the AFC West, man, that division is hot. So yeah, these people are getting some outrageous contracts, but a lot of them are backloaded. So people are like, oh, how can you do this and that? Well, it's like, in 2023 they got that Amazon deal and the cap's supposed to spike. So it's smart to be like, okay, I'll give you $8 million this year, but next year you'll be making 15 or whatever the case may be. So those are my thoughts.
Yeah, I love that Russell Wilson's gone out of Seattle. Of course, I was kind of, worried at first that Watson might go to Seattle, but once we heard, that wasn't going to happen, I was like, yeah, whoever they get, he's not going to be better than Russell Wilson. And it seemed obviously, how didn't even matter how bad or good or anything that Seattle was. It seemed Russell Wilson always had a way to end up freaking coming back and beating us at the end of a freaking game, So
exactly.
I'm so glad that we don't have to see his ass twice a freaking year anymore. But yeah, I
Tanya.
think
Raiders still ain't going to no Super Bowl.
Nope. And definitely that I wouldn't be surprised if they don't, come in fourth in their own division. Shit.
You know what's crazy? Like, and not only how good the teams are in general in AFC West, just the quarterback play in that
Yeah.
division. Herbert, Mahomes, Russell Wilson, Derek Carr. Like, that's a ridiculous division for quarterbacks.
Yeah. I mean, and Carr's fourth,
Yeah.
in
He's
the
probably
list.
top
So
and he's probably top 12 in the NFL.
yeah.
And he's fourth. That's crazy.
Yep. That is crazy. John JV says, what about Jarvis Landry?
He'd be a great slot. I wouldn't be opposed to him either. He's sure-handed. He moves the chains, and he has starting ability. Like, if we have to miss games with the Debo or IU, he can step in as a second receiver with no issue. So yeah, I wouldn't mind him. It all comes down to salary. Like, I'd give him a 2-year deal just to say, hey, if you're okay playing with, maybe $6 million this year, and then we, with bonuses to make up to maybe 11 or something like that along those lines, and then in 2023 your salary can go up or whatever. Like, I'd be all for it because he is a sure-handed receiver, and like I said, he's a solid guy, and he blocks too. So
yeah, I guess videos came out earlier about with him practicing with Debo today.
Yeah.
Like training together or whatever. But yeah, I would be for that as well. If, there would be some way, obviously, that we don't kill ourselves from, and stop ourselves from making other new, moves that we need.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if we could sign him and, get a signing bonus there. And like you said, get it, for the second year for, the more money to kick in, I think that would work.
Yeah. I mean, if we go into the season with, Debo, Ayuk, and Jarvis Landry as your top 3 receivers, and then you still have Jaquan Jennings coming in, taking some snaps on a Ray McLeod, sprinkling him in there and every now and then. I'd be more than happy with that wide receiver room.
Yeah, I mean, either way, we definitely need to get some receivers because our receiver room's pretty empty right now.
Yep.
And Sherfield signed with the Dolphins.
Miami, right? Yep.
Yep. How do you feel like about, the players that we lost? I know you talked about
Tomlinson.
Yeah, Lakin. How do you feel, about Raheem going to Miami, about
Mostert? I saw that coming. He's from
Yep.
Florida. I mean, that's a perfect fit for him. He goes back home to a place that's cheaper to live, no state taxes, and like I said, he's at home. He knows the scheme. I think he actually has the edge of being a starter if he's healthy. You know what I mean? Like, he can go in there and be like, man, I know the scheme over everybody. You know what I mean? Because I know they signed Chase Edmonds that came from Arizona, but Mostert has the upper hand in that offense. So if he's healthy, he can definitely start there. So I'm happy. I'm actually happy for him, but I'm not sad. I mean, I'm not gonna say I'm not sad he's gone because he gave us some good times, but it is what it is. You know what I mean? DJ Jones, I wanted to keep him as well.
Yeah.
But $10 million a year for a rotational player, no.
Yeah,
like that's crazy. What I want them to do, though, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what he's asking for, but I would like to bring back Arden Key.
Yeah. And I'm surprised. Like, I don't know if maybe they're waiting, like, they got something, that's being worked out, like, because I thought he would be signed somewhere else, by now.
For sure.
If, and we haven't heard anything about him. So I'm wondering if the 49ers are just waiting,
And this is another thing. This is why, everybody keeps talking edge. This is why, I say I trust Chris Casseret so much. Arden Key's been in the league this is going on to his 5th year. He had more sacks this year. Well, he equaled his sack just this year alone from his previous 3 years in the NFL.
Yeah.
Playing under Chris Casseret. That's why I'm just like, man, like, if you can bring him in, and like I said, you got him. If you bring him back, Ebelcom coming back, Minihue coming back, all playing in their 2nd year in this defense, I think everybody's kind of underrating our pass rush.
Yeah. I'm really hoping that, they do end up working something out with Key.
What's the name left too? Kentavious Street.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that. Yeah, he signed with the Saints.
Yeah,
they didn't put a tender on him, so
yeah. And then Jordan Willis too. That's another one who's out there that I wouldn't mind bringing him back for cheap. I think the dude's only like 27. He's still young.
Yeah. What do you think about the whole Baker asking for a trade thing? Do you think that they end up granting him the trade? Because he's saying that it's not repairable. So I mean, I don't think that if they don't grant him the trade, he's not going to play. He'll sit out. That money's guaranteed. So how does that work?
Yeah.
Because he's on his 5th year, and that money's fully guaranteed. So if he sits out, what happens with that? I think you're muted. I don't know. I can't hear you. Okay.
About now, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing: if he's telling you pretty much the relationship is unrepairable, and if the Seahawks are really trying to kick the tires on him, you'd be fools not to take some draft capital. Like, I think you should just go ahead and take him. Like for the Seahawks got back, like, I don't think he's worth the first, but Seahawks got back some good draft capital for Russell Wilson. So if they're calling, like, because then here's a situation: how hard is he going to play for you? Exactly. Is he going to sabotage you? Like, he might just go out there and be like, I don't care if I throw interceptions and be a leader. And then oh no, I think that was the Colts. I was thinking somebody said something like, I don't want a child, or I don't want
that was
an adult. Was it the Browns?
Yeah, that was the Browns.
I want an adult
Baker
at quarterback.
Statement. Yeah.
So if you think of him that way, and then if he's saying it's unrepairable, get rid of him.
Yeah. And then, at first it said that they were going to decline it. But then I saw a report that said if they're able to, work something out to where they have a replacement quarterback for him, then they'll trade him. So it's like, well, I was listening to some Browns, fans talking, and they're excited to have Jimmy. They're all wanting Jimmy. Like, they're like, he has such great leadership. He's exactly what we need. He's a game manager, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, all right, good. Sell it. Tell your front office. Start tweeting it to him. You guys can have him.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just, yeah, that's funny. I don't know what's going on, and maybe they can't. I see all the comments, people saying I want to keep Willis and Key, but that's going to go down to we're kind of handcuffed right now because of Jimmy, because of his contract being on the books. So there's not really much more we can do right now until that's taken care of. So I don't know what's going on with that, but I don't know. Like, and here's my thing too, was like, John and Kyle's job is to do what's best for the team. And holding on to Jimmy is not really improving your team. Like, right now, if you look at our roster right now, we're not better than when we finish the season. I think we've gotten worse. Yeah. We lost our second best offensive lineman. We lost our, a great interior D tackle. A target on the team, not on the team no more. So I don't think we've really gotten better, except for maybe the secondary. That the secondary has gotten better, but if you look at everything as a whole, I don't think we've gotten better. So I don't know what's going on. Like I said, it's still early. Like, it's still week 1 of free agency, so I'm not gonna panic. But like I said, the more the days go by, the less and less is going to be out there as far as bringing some assets to your team. So I don't know.
Yeah. Crazy. Where do you think Watson ends up going? I think he now narrowed it down to the Saints and the Falcons.
I think he's going to pick Atlanta. I think they're going to pick Atlanta because at least you can get you a bridge quarterback for a couple of years. Even though I don't think that Davis Mills played bad, but if Davis Mills can maybe get back to the bench as a second stringer and maybe learn a few things from Matt Ryan for a year or two. I don't know what the situation is, but because Matt Ryan, he's still a serviceable quarterback. Yeah. You know what I mean? He can win you some games. So I think that's ultimately where he's going to go, but it just depends. Like, it's funny. I don't know what they're going to give up. Like, are they going to give up a Kyle Pitts? Or are they going to give up an AJ Terrell? Because I don't think that, if I'm Deshaun Watson, I'm going there so I can throw to Kyle Pitts.
Exactly. You know what I'm saying? I don't think he's going there.
That's what I'm saying. So, like, what are they asking for? But I think, and like the Saints, like, are you going to give up Marshawn Lattimore? Like, I think if I look at the rosters as a whole, I think Atlanta has better younger pieces, if that makes sense. You know what I
mean? Do you think that they would include Matt Ryan in the deal then? Ship him back over to the Texans? Or do you think that they end up trading him somewhere else?
Yeah, because I also heard him going to the Colts as well.
Yeah.
I heard him going to the Colts or possibly even the Browns, depending on what's going on with Baker Mayfield. But I don't know, like, to me, and I get it, everybody's like, oh, we have to wait for this domino to fall. Like, how many dominoes have to fall before you take care of your own business?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, oh, I'm waiting on this, I'm waiting on that. And here's the fact of the matter is this. If it was Josh Allen coming off of shoulder surgery, Russell Wilson coming off of shoulder surgery, it wouldn't matter. They would have been traded. You're looking at it. You're looking at this at Jimmy. One, he's on the wrong side of 30. He's injury prone. He's mediocre. So what are you going? Is there really a market out there for him? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I think right now teams are just calling us bluff. Teams are calling us bluff. But if they end up having, and I hope it doesn't happen, maybe this can be another episode. But if they end up keeping this dude because they're being like, what's the word I want to use? Because they're being arrogant, because they want to be right. Like, oh, just keep him and see if we can get trade value in 2023. Like, if they do that, there's going to be some pissed off fans. And like you said, the human element thing. How are you going to let Jimmy go on there and say a farewell? And I'm sure after that farewell, there was John and Kyle and Adam Peters like, look, man, Jimmy's gone. Here are the keys. You're going to run this offense. And then now he's down there in Southern California working his tail off. He's working his tail down in Southern California with Brandon Ayuk, trying to get some chemistry going on and stuff like that. Yep. Then, oh, you know what, Trey? Never mind. We're keeping Jimmy for another year. And then somebody said, well, restructure him and keep him as a backup. He's not going to go for that. Why would he take a pay cut? I'm going to go in and I'm going to compete. Even if I lose the starting job, I'm sitting on the bench as a $25 million backup.
Yep.
So why would he do that? Like, it doesn't make any sense for him to take a pay cut.
Yeah.
And it would be a nightmare keeping him on this team.
I completely agree. And I don't see it.
I don't either. But, but with this organization, I just don't put nothing past these dudes. Because here's a situation. If it comes down to it where you end up having to cut this dude, you failed. You failed because your plan was to keep him and get some trade value, and you end up cutting him for nothing. And then if you cut him now, or let's say cut him in 2 weeks because nobody budges, and now you really failed because you could have cut him the first day of free agency and got the pieces you wanted, but now you're getting like bottom of the barrel. You know what I'm saying? Right. So it's just to me, I feel like it's a lose-lose situation for the Niners unless they get like a third. If they get a third or better, it's a win. If they get like a fourth or fifth, it's a loss for them, but it's still a win for us because he's off the books. His money being off the books is more important to me.
Yeah, I agree. That might be true, but the thing is that he has a no trade clause, so it doesn't really matter at the end of the day who's offering what. It's not going to be who's offering the most, because if he doesn't want to play for that team, he's not playing for that team. So if he wants to play for the Falcons over the Saints and the Falcons are offering less than the Saints, it doesn't matter. They're going to have to send him to the Falcons and take the less offer.
Exactly.
He gets to decide. So
he holds all the cards.
Yeah.
They can say, oh man, I can get this, and that. And here's the thing. He doesn't care about making them better.
No.
He's going to go to a position that's best suited for him. So even if the Browns have all these assets and draft picks, he can be like, no, I don't want to go there. I want to go to Atlanta. So now he's forcing their hand to get rid of him. Like, okay, here's the thing. And like I said, I mentioned this before. If I'm a quarterback getting traded to a team, I want you to keep as many assets as you can because I want our team to be as best as possible. You know what I'm saying, Miriah? Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. They're saying if Jimmy's our quarterback, we're going to riot. Protest outside John and Kyle's house.
NorCal Bill.
If Jimmy's our quarterback this season, then this is going to be a Dolphins podcast for the next year. We're going to be Fins Up in Vegas podcast.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, I hate the way that all went down. Like, that's his whole surgery thing was such bullshit. And I do think that that's playing a huge part. I think that he would have no way that Wentz gets traded before he does if he doesn't have that surgery right then.
Yeah.
I think he's trying to stick it to the 49ers.
Oh, for sure. and you know what? And as much as I can't stand the way he handled it, I can't blame him. Because now you're forcing his hand. Because like I said, even if they cut him, they still got to pay him that injury settlement of almost $8 million. So like I said, it feels like it's a lose-lose situation. I feel like Kyle and John overplayed their hand and Don Yee just finessed them.
Yeah. I mean, and just because the locker room and, they value Jimmy, like not every team values Jimmy like that. Like they have to
Exactly.
realize, like, I feel like they're acting like the fans and they're in it with their
Yeah.
hearts, instead of freaking their brains.
And here's the thing, fam. If let's just say if they keep him, I don't think it's going to happen. If they keep him, he's an unrestricted free agent next year. So if you keep him because you say, oh well, now there's no trade value because who's going to trade for him because if he's a free agent? So even if you keep him, you're going to lose out on him anyway,
Right.
unless you trade him at the trade deadline. But there's no team that's going to do that. There's no team going to be like, oh, he's an unrestricted free agent. Let me get you a second for somebody that's going to be an unrestricted free agent next year. That's not going to happen. Like, you just played yourself. I agree, Tanya. I feel like they got absolute finessed.
Yep.
Because the fact that he had the surgery the week of the combine, he just like, okay, you guys want to do me dirty? I have my surgery the week of the combine while all these GMs and stuff are evaluating these quarterbacks. And if you thought you were going to trade for me, well, now you're going to have to wait until I have the surgery and pass a physical. And then what pisses me off too is that thumb thing. A third grade torn ligament does not heal by itself.
And we
If
haven't
it's
heard
torn,
anything about it.
if something's torn, it's torn. Like, it just doesn't automatically heal. So, yeah. So where's that injury?
Right. It's crazy. Speaking of Jimmy, I had forgot to bring this up, that I had seen that Akash had posted that the 49ers have 7, I don't know, like, the numbers, salary cap ain't my thing, but he had said that they have 7.9 million in cap space, but that's without the signings of Ward and Burks or whatever.
Yeah.
So, what, that's the thing, like, how are they expecting, like, to keep Jimmy and be, they can't even sign the player, pay the players that they're freaking trying to sign, it's like,
Yeah.
they already restructured Kittle, they already restructured Armstead,
yeah.
They already reworked D Ford, so it's like, how are they planning to do this and still sign the other pieces that we need, pay our freaking draft picks, like,
exactly. And we got
I don't see
9
it
draft
possible
picks
that we keep that they make it work to keep him on the team.
Yeah. And like I said, we got 9 draft picks, and what they say, 7.9 million is allocated to the rookies.
Yeah.
So I mean, there you go. It's just, I don't know.
That's exactly what we have right now. So
yeah, this dude has to be gone. Like, I don't know. Something's got to give.
Yeah. I think it's coming.
This is crazy. Yeah.
I'd be surprised if it doesn't happen, like, very soon. I really do think it's this whole Watson shit now, since he's dragging it out and teams don't know, like, what they're going to do at quarterback. And it's like, how long are you going to drag this shit out? Like, they keep saying, oh, we should hear by today. Oh, we should hear by today. Oh, we should hear by the weekend. It's like, how long are you going to, like, seek all the attention and stop the entire NFL to have all eyes on you,
It's true.
It's so ridiculous. I'm sick of his ass too. How do you feel like the teams, I know, like, his whole went to court, whatever, and it's, but, like, he still has those girls, or, like, still have, like, cases against him. So, like, how do you think, with teams just gonna sign him, do you think that the NFL still ends up, possibly suspending him, or
I think he'll get a 4-game suspension. I think he'll get at least 4 games. I don't want to sit here and speculate and say, oh, like, what he did and stuff like that. 1 or 2 women, one thing, but 22 is just, man, that's crazy. Like I said, I'm not saying the man is guilty, but that's a lot of women coming forward. But it does look fishy in people's eyes that it came out after he wanted to leave the city.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, I want to leave the city. All of a sudden, all these allegations pop up. Like, who knows? Like, the owner might have been involved and paid these women, hey, let me give you some money to press charge. Who knows? You know what I'm saying? Like, there's some shady people out there. So,
yeah, I just don't know, like, how that, goes for, like, the whole, like, I don't know, like, how the fan base looks at the team, how the teammates are going to feel about it. And I guess, if he's winning and it brings a championship, they're going to forget about everything, like, Roethlisberger. But it's like, I don't know. That's what like, when rumors started circling again before they got shot down very quickly, that the 49ers were going to talk to Watson. I just couldn't see the 49ers bringing in Watson with, the things that have happened and the culture that they're now trying to, build up the 49ers to. Like, I just couldn't see that happening.
Yeah. And Sin is making a great point, too.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, it's going to be interesting because you're giving up a lot to trade for him for a quarterback that you don't even know yet how long or when or
Exactly.
what's going to happen with him.
Yeah,
So it's
and
really
I agree
crazy.
with you. Like, I think for 49ers, kind of learn their lesson with like the Reuben Foster thing and
Yeah.
stuff like that. Like, I think they have a culture that's excellent. I don't know. I think I did see you in there. You saw what Adrian Colbert was saying on Spaces.
I only caught like the very end.
Oh, Adrian Colbert was saying that out of all the teams he's played for, so he played, I think he's been on 4 NFL teams, I think he said. Out of 4 teams he's played on, he said San Francisco is by far the best team he's played on and has the best culture. He said that did you hear at the end when he said he was going to have a baby?
Yeah.
He was like, I'm going to have a baby and they're going to be in that red and gold.
Yeah.
Like, he loves the 49ers. You know what I mean? I think he probably has a love for them because that's the team that took a chance on him. Like, they're the ones who drafted him. So that's probably where that love comes from. But yeah, like, he was just like, San Francisco's culture is amazing. Like, they let you be who you are. There's no micromanaging and stuff like that. Like, he was telling us all on Spaces. So yeah. So I think that's why, if the culture is as good as everybody's saying it is, like, I doubt they're going to bring in somebody who, even though he's not guilty, but, may have some character issues.
Right. Yeah, I agree, Tanya, that if they didn't suspend him, the NFL would have a big problem on their hands, especially that we just saw what's his face get suspended for an entire season for gambling on football, which like, I understand, why they can't gamble and the whole situation, but a year when we see players beat people and beat their wives and all kinds of other shit and they get suspended a lot less time than that was crazy to me.
Yeah, John V. I wish I could have talked to Colbert. But you know what, though? Here's the thing, though, JV. I agree with you because Colbert was on there. He was actually on there before you got on there, Miriah. He was praising Jimmy, that he's seen Jimmy make every throw and he gets a bad rap. But at the same time, I feel like these NFL players always stick up for each other.
Yeah.
I feel like, and plus too, he even said on the Spaces that he's looking for a job. Like, he's a free agent right now. He was like, I'm working out every day. I'm trying to stay in shape. He's like, I'm looking for that call. So you don't want to create no awkwardness and, with
Right.
organizations of you saying, and I get he's on Spaces, but there's still that stuff gets out. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So if he's on there, as you see, people like to record that stuff. So if he's on there and he's just like, oh yeah, Jimmy sucks and he doesn't do this, he's not going to say that. So, because what he was saying, I was hoping I can talk. And it was funny because Roscoe and Vish were actually like, I respect your opinion, but I don't agree with you. Like, I was like happy because I'm like, okay, there's not people who are like, who cares if he's an NFL player? He's still a man. Like,
yeah.
I hate when people sit there and put their head in people's lap just because they're a celebrity.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to rock the boat because, he's a celebrity. I want him to respect. No, man. Miss me with that. If you don't agree with somebody, be a man and just say, hey, I respect your opinion, but I don't agree with what you're saying. And I wish I could have talked because he was like, yeah, Jimmy this, Jimmy that. Everybody was like, oh yeah, I can see what you're saying. But Vish was like, well, I don't agree with you. Like this was kind of pressing him a little bit. And I love that because, like, dude, like, man up and you need to stick to your guns. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got in right when like Vish was trying to ask him the last question. Before he asked him about Ward and them, he kept asking him, I forget what it was. He didn't, and where he would rank Jimmy, like, and he wouldn't answer it.
No, he wouldn't.
And I agree with you that he's not going to badmouth him, and especially that, he says, right there that he holds the 49ers with high regards, and like, he's still going to support those colors and everything. So he's especially not going to badmouth a quarterback that's, currently on their roster.
Exactly. Yep. No, I totally agree.
Yeah, this is funny though, because he does he's not afraid. I think that's why, like, his show with him and Grant does so well. I believe that's, if not it was for a long time. I would be surprised if it still isn't. Grant's, the highest watch show is the weekly ones with Vish. And I think that is because, Vish don't get on there and just agree with Grant just because it's his show,
Exactly.
like he gets on there and, puts up a fight about every point that Grant has, and of course that makes it must watch TV,
Exactly.
must listen
Like
to
Skip and Shannon.
podcast, whatever
Yep.
it is,
Yep, it's like Skip and Shannon. They never agree, and people love that because we talked about this before. If you watch a show and everybody's agreeing with the same point, like it's gonna make it boring. It's like, oh, they all agree with this, they all say it's the same thing. So yeah, it's crazy.
I don't know if you've gotten in too much into the draft.
Yeah, not too much in the draft yet. I just bought my draft book, and here's proof because I have it right here. NFL draft. I just bought it at Walmart. So yeah, I usually don't get into it until after the combine and but I have the combine recorder, so I'm gonna watch the combine this weekend, look at my draft book, see who I like. But one player I do want on this team, but I don't think he'll be there at 61. There's a strong safety out of Penn State named Jaquan Brisker. He's a beast. Like he's fast, he's physical, he's a great tackler. Like I would love to bring him on this team. I think him and Ward at safety would be a dynamic duo. But at the same time, Christian McCaffrey traded to the Rams. You got to be joking. I hope somebody ain't trolling. But anyway, somebody's probably trolling. I don't know if I can trust somebody who don't got a picture up. But anyway,
and that's never been in here before.
Yeah, I've never been here. But yeah, so anyway, I would just be like, yeah, so he's one person for sure. If you guys want to take a look at him, he's a strong safety from Penn State, Jaquan Brisker. He was going to come out last year, and he's going through the draft process, and he changed his mind before the deadline and went back to school, which was a good thing for him because he raised his draft stock because he was supposed to be a day 3 guy. Now they're projecting him to go early to mid round 2, but who knows? There's people that fall all the time. So if he's there at 61, I would take him. So yeah.
That's not true. There's no McCaffrey news. Also, I'm seeing though, as I'm looking up the news, that it's funny with, the Rams signing Robinson. It now says that teams are calling about Robert Woods.
Oh, I'm sure.
So
they're not going to give him up. Nah, so? I don't think so. Why? If you can afford him, why would you? Like, if you can have that 3 receiver set.
Can they afford him though? Because they've lost a lot of pieces too.
They do. True, but they don't. And I know that they don't have that many draft picks either. So I don't know. I don't know if they can.
What was he? Their left tackle or whatever retired?
Andrew Whitworth did. Yep. So I don't know. I mean, like I said, if they can afford him, what they'll probably do is maybe if they trade him, they'll probably bring in somebody like a Cole Beasley to be the slot or something. Because he just got released by the Bills, and he's pretty solid too.
Yeah, he is. But I don't know that the 49ers would sign him.
Nah, I don't think so. I'm talking about the Rams. I think the Rams would
go for somebody
like him. Yeah, I'm saying, like if Robert Woods is gone, they'd probably be like, "Hey, why don't you come here, Cole Beasley, and play?" So yeah, I don't think the Niners would sign him. For real.
But and they somehow end up being able to sign everybody.
Yeah, and Les Snead is aggressive. I got to give him his props.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah,
they don't worry about draft picks, and they don't somehow worry about money either.
Not at all. But I remember. I don't know if you listen to Spaces. Do you know that guy Lee? He's from New Zealand. He has an accent. Yeah. So he was like, people want to sit there and dog out McVay and Les Snead and you don't get aggressive, stuff like that. It's like their timeline.
I just said I looked this up, JV. It's not true.
Yeah, their timeline with Sean McVay and John Lynch and them was the same. They both got hired in 2017 together, right?
Yeah.
But there was like, you can say what you want about the Rams, but they've won a Super Bowl in the timeline that Kyle Shanahan's been in, and Kyle hasn't won one. So you can say what you want, but their ultimate goal is to get a ring, and they got one. So
yeah, that's why, like the argument about, what's better or, like, oh, well, how's the Rams going to be in a few years? It's like, well, that coaching staff doesn't care because if they lose, they're not going to be there anyway to see it.
Exactly.
They don't care if they trade away the entire future of that team. So it's like maybe we start seeing more teams run their teams like that, Never know.
JV.
It worked.
Yeah, exactly.
What's he talking about?
He's talking about Lee.
Oh.
He's from the future, TL. It's like April 19th in New Zealand.
Yeah, I first started seeing him on Rombo.
Rumble. Yeah.
He's funny.
Yeah, he's good.
And he
He's
pops off with
knowledgeable,
some
though.
crazy comments, like off the wall things, like you just like wouldn't expect him to say, like all of a
Yeah.
sudden, and then he just goes back to being silent. Like it's
Yeah.
like, where did that come from?
Yeah, he's funny. So yeah, is there any more
Yeah.
questions?
No, I don't think so.
I think somebody asked about I think it was from, there you go. Are we ever going to get rid of that $25 million paperweight? Your guess is as good as mine, brother. Like me and Miriah said, he would have been gone yesterday. You know what I'm saying? Like he would have been gone. So yeah, I just I don't know how long you've been on, but I think the issue with me, at least, I can just say what worries me is him being on the books is affecting us getting some holes filled as far as like strong safety and that offensive line, because like I said, Kyle doesn't trust young offensive linemen. It's proof in the pudding. He doesn't trust them. He likes his veterans. He trades for them or he picks them from free agency. That's facts. So you got McKivitz, Moore, and Banks, who are, even though they're not going to be rookies, they could be their first year starting. And then if you go and you draft some, he's not going to trust them. So I don't know how that's going to work. We need to bring in at least one veteran, either offensive guard or a tackle. You don't have to bring in two. I would love to if you could, but if at least bring in one for some depth to give Banks and Moore and them some competition. But yeah, I don't know, Troy. Like I said, your guess is as good as mine.
I think soon.
I hope so.
Soon.
I hope so.
These other better quarterbacks find their homes.
Yeah.
Because there's teams that are going to need a quarterback. Like, you know, I don't think that there's enough quarterback to go around. Like decent starting quarterbacks, and Jimmy's a starting quarterback, you know, as much as we all dislike him.
Yeah, he's definitely a starter. It's just, you know, and I think the only thing that bothers me though, man, and it's like, and I know it is what it is. Like we can sit here and do the shoulda, coulda, wouldas, but man, like giving him the 5-year contract is one thing. Okay, cool. Like it is what it is. Like, you know, he showed you a 5-game sample size that he could be good. But why would you give somebody after 5 games a no trade clause? Like, and it's biting us in the tail 5 years later. Like that no trade clause has put a hindrance on our plans. You know what I'm saying? After 5 games.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, that's done now. So
yeah,
we can trade him wherever the hell we want. Trade him to New Zealand with Lee. I don't give a shit. Just get him out of here.
Yeah, but now it's just like I wonder if teams are playing hardball. Like, well, you know what? Now that his no trade clause is gone and you need the cap space, what are you going to do? Because if I'm a team, I'm going to be real. If I'm a team, I'm not offering them nothing.
Right.
I'm not offering you nothing. Like, yeah, you're right, JV. He fooled us all.
He's still fooling some.
Yep.
Shit. There's still some that want him to start this freaking next season.
Oh my god.
And probably, you know, I've seen freaking people saying to extend him and all kinds of shit still. It's like,
yeah,
so ridiculous.
Yeah.
But yeah,
that's about it. Yeah,
that's all we have. Maybe we end up trading Jimmy tomorrow or something.
I hope so. Hopefully,
we'll do some breaking news celebrating.
I wake up usually. Well, actually, tomorrow I won't because it's Friday. But I usually wake up like around 5 o'clock, 5:15, and I do push-ups before I go to work. So I'm like, hopefully, I wake up at 5:15 and I see that he's off my team. But that's wishful thinking.
Right. Shout out to everybody that joined us tonight. We
Absolutely,
appreciate you guys.
Appreciate every single one of you.
Joel, Sin,
JV,
the Dream, JV.
Yeah.
I
think Joel was in here earlier too.
Yeah.
I'll wake you up. How was he? I'll wake you 4 hours early, TL. I appreciate that, Tanya. Yeah, you know I had to hit him. You know I had to hit him with the Bay Area rap, Tanya. But I was scared that if I named like JT the Bigger Figure, like he wouldn't know who that was. But I'm surprised. I'm glad he knew who he was. So yeah, but he's right.
I don't know who those people are.
Yeah. But he's right. Well, yeah. But I give you I give you a pass because you're not from there,
right?
But the situation is, you know, Messy Marv, when his head was right, he used to have some bangers. Like his albums were fire, and and say Tanya's still in here, I'm sure she can agree with that. Like before, I think now he's like on drugs, all cracked out and stuff, but his albums were fire. So
49ers throwback. Appreciate it.
yeah.
My brother Troy, hope you're doing well.
Look at Tanya. Yep.
But yeah, we'll see how the rest of this plays out. Just be patient. I know everybody's like, we gotta do this, we gotta do that. We're freaking out, but just be patient. I do think, they do get paid to do this. They do have a plan. They're not just, throwing their shit at a wall and hoping it sticks, Like,
yeah, that's funny. Yeah.
I think, we're gonna be okay. I don't think that we're going into this season with Jimmy G, guys. It's okay. We'll be celebrating soon.
Yep.
And when we are, we'll come back and celebrate with you guys.
Absolutely. I might even take a shot on the show.
Yeah.
All right, you guys. Appreciate it.
Again, shout out to Splash Cousin for joining us.
Thank you again, Jordan.
We appreciate you guys. Talk to you guys soon. Stay safe, everybody.